Ma'am, hold on a second. What were you doing inside the courthouse today?
I'm finished with jury duty. Am I being detained?
I just need to see some identification. Stay right here while I verify you.
Verify what exactly? That a black juror is allowed to leave a public courtroom?
Requesting a second unit. Possible
Officer, you're about
suspicious
to create a federal incident on court.
It was 4:47 p.m. on a Friday evening. The Edward R. Roybal Federal Building was emptying, its bronze doors releasing a steady stream of attorneys, clerks and staff into the amber glow of late October. The week's legal battles were over. Voices carried across the marble plaza, low, tired, already pivoting toward weekend plans. Briefcases swung at sides, heels clicked against stone. She walked alone, descending the steps with a slim leather portfolio beneath one arm. Black woman, early 50s, charcoal blazer, pearl earrings, measured stride, composed expression, the posture of someone who had navigated power without apology. Near the security perimeter, a figure shifted. Officer Paul Keller stood at the edge of the plaza, his hand resting on his belt, his eyes tracking movement. He'd been watching the exit for the past 20 minutes. Now his gaze locked. She didn't notice him, and somehow that made it worse. He stepped forward. "Ma'am, hold on a second." She stopped mid-step, turned slowly. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "Yes, officer?" Keller approached, chest first, badge catching the light. "I need to conduct a quick security check." She glanced at the courthouse behind her, then back at him. "I just exited a secured federal facility. What exactly are you checking?" The question landed like a challenge. Keller's jaw tightened. "Just routine, ma'am. I'll need to see some identification." She didn't move. "Am I being detained?" "You're being checked." "That's not an answer, officer." Her voice was steady, precise, each word deliberate. "Under what legal authority are you stopping me?" Keller's face flushed. His tone hardened. "Under the authority of this badge. Now, are you going to cooperate, or do we have a problem?" Around them, the plaza began to slow. A paralegal paused on the steps. A clerk turned her head. Someone pulled out a phone. The woman stood perfectly still, her hands visible, her voice unwavering. "If I'm not being detained, I'm free to go. If I am being detained, you're required to articulate reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. Which is it?" Keller's hand moved to his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 45. I've got a female refusing to comply with a security check outside the federal building, requesting backup." The static crackle echoed across the stone. Heads turned. More phones emerged. She didn't flinch. "Officer, you're making a mistake." "The only mistake here," Keller said, stepping closer, "is you thinking you can walk away from a cop." She met his eyes. "I've committed no crime. You have no reasonable suspicion. This stop is unlawful." Keller's voice dropped to a growl. "Lady, I don't care if you're a lawyer, a judge, or the damn president. When I tell you to stop, you stop." Her eyes narrowed. "Then you've just violated my Fourth Amendment rights, officer. And this," she gestured subtly to the growing crowd, the phones now recording, "is all on camera." In front of a building inscribed with the words "Equal Justice Under Law," a black woman walking away from her own briefing was now being treated as a threat that needed answering, and everyone watching could feel it. This was not about security, it was about suspicion. Her name was Annie Sullivan. Outside legal circles, it meant nothing. Inside them, it meant everything. Annie Sullivan did not come from privilege. She came from Birmingham, from the long shadow of Selma, from Howard and Yale and the highest courts in the land. She had argued for justice her entire life. Now she would have to invoke it just to leave a courthouse in peace. The steps of the Edward R. Roybal Federal Building are bathed in the amber glow of late afternoon. It's 4:47 p.m. on a crisp October Friday, and the week's legal battles are over. Prosecutors, defense attorneys, clerks and jurors spill out onto the plaza, their voices low, their movements unhurried. Some pause to check phones. Others loosen ties or adjust scarves against the autumn chill. The building looms behind them, glass and granite, its facade inscribed with the words, "Equal Justice Under Law." The letters catch the light, casting faint shadows across the stone. Annie Sullivan emerges from the bronze doors, her posture erect, her gaze steady. She carries no briefcase, only a slim leather portfolio tucked beneath one arm. Her charcoal blazer is tailored, Her heels click softly against the marble steps. She moves with the unhurried confidence of someone who has walked these corridors for decades. No wasted motion, no hesitation. She looks like what she is. Someone who belongs. Around her, the plaza hums with the quiet ritual of a workday ending. A young lawyer juggles a coffee cup and a stack of files. Two clerks laugh at something on a phone screen. A courier in a reflective vest wheels a dolly of legal boxes toward a waiting van. No one gives Sullivan a second glance. She's part of the landscape, professional, composed, unremarkable. But Officer Paul Keller sees something else. He stands near the security perimeter, 30 feet from the main entrance, his hand resting on his belt. 34, compact and wiry, with a buzz cut and a jawline that suggests he's always ready for a fight. He's been assigned to courthouse perimeter security for the past 6 months, a posting he considers beneath him. Too static, too boring, not enough action. His fingers drum near his radio, restless, scanning the crowd for something out of place. His eyes lock onto Sullivan. She descends the steps with measured grace, her portfolio tucked neatly under one arm. She doesn't glance in his direction, doesn't acknowledge him, doesn't slow, and somehow that bothers him most. Keller's jaw tightens, his weight shifts forward. He watches her navigate the plaza, her heels clicking a steady rhythm against stone. She passes a cluster of attorneys without stopping, doesn't pause to chat, doesn't fumble for keys or check her phone, just walks, purposeful, direct. Something about it doesn't sit right. He can't articulate why, can't point to a specific detail, but his gut, the thing his sergeant always praised him for trusting, tells him to pay attention, so he steps forward. "Ma'am, hold on a second." Sullivan stops mid-step. She turns slowly, her expression polite but guarded. Her eyes sweep over him, the uniform, the badge, the hand resting too casually near his belt. "Yes, officer?" Keller approaches, chest first, his badge catching the light. He stops 3 feet away, close enough to establish presence, far enough to maintain the illusion of courtesy. "I need to conduct a quick security check." Sullivan's brow furrows slightly. She glances back at the courthouse, then returns her gaze to him. "I just exited a secured federal facility. I passed through metal detectors, had my bag screened, and was cleared by security. What exactly are you checking?" Keller's jaw tightens. The question feels like a challenge, like she's testing him. He shifts his weight, straightens his shoulders. "Just routine, ma'am. I'll need to see some identification." Her posture doesn't change. Her voice remains level, measured. "Am I being detained?" "You're being checked." "That's not an answer, officer." Each word lands with precision, deliberate and clear. "Under what legal authority are you stopping me?" Keller's face flushes. Heat creeps up his neck. This isn't how this is supposed to go. People comply. They apologize. They fumble for their wallets and hand over their IDs without question. They don't quote procedure back at him. His tone hardens. "Under the authority of this badge. Now, are you going to cooperate, or do we have a problem?" Around them, the plaza begins to slow. A paralegal pauses on the steps, her phone half raised. A clerk turns her head. Two attorneys near the fountain stop mid-conversation, their eyes drifting toward the exchange. Sullivan doesn't move. Her hands remain visible, one still clutching the portfolio, the other relaxed at her side. Her voice stays calm, but the precision sharpens. "If I'm not being detained, I'm free to go. If I'm being detained, you're required to articulate reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. Which is it?" Keller's hand moves to his radio. His thumb hovers over the call button. His pulse quickens. This woman, this lawyer probably, is making him look weak, making him look uncertain. In front of a crowd, he keys the radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 45. I've got a female refusing to comply with a security check outside the federal building, requesting backup." The static crackle echoes across the plaza. Heads turn. More phones emerge from pockets and purses. A young man in a suit slows his descent down the steps, his eyes widening. Sullivan stands perfectly still, her expression unreadable. When she speaks again, her voice carries just enough to be heard by those nearby. "Officer, you're making a mistake." Keller meets her eyes, his jaw set. "The only mistake here is you thinking you can walk away from a cop." The static crackle of the radio draws attention like a gunshot. Heads turn across the plaza. A paralegal on the steps freezes mid-stride, her hand already reaching for her phone. Two attorneys near the fountain exchange glances. A clerk shifts her briefcase to her other hand and stops walking. Within seconds, phones emerge from pockets and purses, screens glowing in the fading light. A young woman in a pencil skirt raises her camera, finger hovering over record. Sullivan stands perfectly still, her hands visible, her portfolio tucked beneath one arm. Her voice remains steady, but the weight behind it has shifted. This is no longer a conversation. It's documentation. "Officer, you're making a mistake." Keller's eyes flash, his shoulders square. He takes a half step forward, closing the distance between them. "The only mistake here is you thinking you can walk away from a cop. Now step to the side, or I'll place you under arrest for obstruction." "Obstruction of what?" Sullivan's voice cuts through the air clear and sharp. "I've committed no crime. You have no reasonable suspicion. This stop is unlawful." Keller steps closer, his voice dropping to a growl meant only for her. But the phones are close enough. The microphones are sensitive enough. "You're going to lecture me on the law? Lady, I don't care if you're a lawyer, a judge, or the damn president. When I tell you to stop, you stop." Sullivan's eyes narrow. For the first time, something flickers across her face. Not fear, not anger, something colder. Recognition. The recognition of a line being crossed. She gestures subtly toward the growing crowd, toward the dozen phones now pointed in their direction, red recording lights blinking like warning signals. "Then you've just violated my Fourth Amendment rights, officer, and this—" Her hand sweeps slowly, deliberately, across the semicircle of witnesses, is all on camera. The plaza has gone quiet. The hum of conversation has died. Even the traffic beyond the plaza seems muted. 30, maybe 40 people have stopped what they were doing. Some stand on the steps. Others cluster near the fountain. A courier has abandoned his dolly. A security guard from inside the building has emerged onto the landing, his hand shading his eyes as he tries to see what's happening. Keller glances at the phones, at the faces, at the woman standing in front of him, calm and unmoved, her posture radiating a kind of authority he can't name but instinctively resents. His hand tightens on his radio. Behind him, the wail of a siren rises in the distance. Backup is coming, and everyone is watching. Annie Sullivan was born in Birmingham, Alabama in 1974, the daughter of a church deacon and a public school teacher. She grew up in the shadow of the civil rights movement, raised on stories of Selma, Montgomery, and the long walk toward justice. Her childhood home sat 3 blocks from the 16th Street Baptist Church. Her grandmother had marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Her father preached sermons about dignity and resistance. Her mother taught her that education was armor. She graduated summa cum laude from Howard University, then Yale Law. She clerked for a Supreme Court justice, argued cases before the highest courts in the land, and rose through the ranks of the Justice Department with a reputation for brilliance, integrity, and an almost surgical understanding of constitutional law. Colleagues called her relentless. Opponents called her unshakable. She had argued 14 cases before the Supreme Court, won 12. President Harris nominated her as Attorney General in January 2025. The Senate confirmed her 52 to 48. She became the first black woman to hold the office. The ceremony was held in the Great Hall of the Justice Department, beneath the words carved into marble. "The United States wins its point whenever justice is done, its citizens in the courts." She had sworn to uphold the Constitution, to defend the rule of law, to ensure equal justice under law. Now she stood on a courthouse plaza, being stopped for walking while black. Paul Keller grew up in a suburb of Phoenix, the son of a retired police sergeant. He joined the force at 23, drawn by the authority, the uniform, the respect. His father had taught him that the badge meant something, that it separated the good guys from the bad. That gut instinct mattered more than legal theory. He'd been praised for being proactive, for trusting his gut. His personnel file included 3 commendations for arrests that stuck, and 2 complaints, both dismissed after internal review. One involved an unlawful search, the other, excessive use of force. Neither left a mark on his record. He believed in order, in control, in the thin blue line that kept chaos at bay. He didn't know the Fourth Amendment, couldn't recite Terry versus Ohio or Florida versus Royer, but he knew what suspicious looked like to him. And right now, it looked like a black woman in a suit who wouldn't show him her ID. Backup arrives in less than 3 minutes. 2 officers, younger, less certain. They exit their cruiser with cautious strides, eyes scanning the crowd, the phones, the woman standing at the center of it all. Keller meets them halfway, his voice tight with frustration, his jaw working overtime. Subject refused to provide ID during a security check. Possible obstruction. One of the officers, a Latino man in his late 20s with a nameplate reading Martinez, glances at Sullivan, then back at Keller. His brow furrows. Did she pass through security inside? That's not the point. Actually, officer, it is. Sullivan's voice cuts through, calm and surgical. She addresses Martinez directly, bypassing Keller entirely. I was screened, cleared, and granted access to a federal courtroom. I passed through metal detectors. My belongings were inspected. I exited through the same secure checkpoint. You have no legal basis to stop me out here. Martinez shifts his weight, uncertain. His partner, a white woman with red hair pulled into a tight bun, looks between Keller and Sullivan, her hand resting on her belt but making no move toward her equipment. Keller's patience snaps. He reaches for Sullivan's arm. "Ma'am, you need to..." Sullivan pulls back sharply, her voice rising for the first time. Not shouting, not panicked, but louder, projected, meant to be heard. "Do not touch me." The crowd gasps. A woman near the fountain audibly inhales. Phones zoom in. Fingers adjusting focus. Thumbs pressing record buttons that were already pressed. "You do not have the authority to detain me, and you do not have the right to lay hands on me." Keller's hand hovers in midair, trembling with rage and confusion. His face is flushed crimson. His breathing is shallow. He looks like a man who has just realized he's made a mistake but cannot afford to admit it. Martinez steps forward, his voice low. "Keller, wait." But Keller doesn't move, doesn't lower his hand, doesn't step back. The plaza is silent except for the distant hum of traffic and the faint click of phone cameras capturing every second. Sullivan's eyes are locked on Keller's. Her voice drops back to its original calm. "This is an unlawful seizure, officer, and you know it." A voice calls out from behind the line of officers, sharp and commanding. "Keller, stand down." Sergeant Mike Dawson pushes through the cluster of uniforms, his stride deliberate, his expression unreadable. Greying at the temples, barrel-chested, with 22 years on the force etched into the lines around his eyes. He takes one look at Sullivan, then at the phones, then at Keller's flushed face and hovering hand. "What's going on here?" Keller stammers, his voice defensive, tight. "She refused to comply with..." "I asked her, Officer Keller, not you." The words land like a slap. Keller's mouth snaps shut. Martinez and his partner step back, creating space. The crowd watches, silent, expectant. Dawson turns to Sullivan, his tone professional, almost apologetic. He removes his cap, holds it against his chest. "Ma'am, I apologize for the confusion. Can you tell me what happened?" Sullivan's voice is steady, but her eyes are hard. She doesn't soften, doesn't relax. "I exited the courthouse after attending a proceeding. Officer Keller stopped me without cause, demanded identification without reasonable suspicion, and threatened arrest when I asserted my constitutional rights. He then attempted to physically detain me." She pauses, letting the weight settle. All of it is on camera. Dawson's face pales. His jaw tightens. He glances at Keller, a look that promises a reckoning later, then back at Sullivan. "What proceeding were you attending, ma'am?" Sullivan allows herself the faintest smile. Not warm, not friendly. The smile of someone who has been patient long enough. "I wasn't attending. I was presiding. Over a briefing. For the United States Department of Justice." Dawson's expression shifts. Recognition flickers across his face. Partial, incomplete, but growing. He straightens slightly, his tone more careful now. "May I ask your name, ma'am?" "You may. But I think you should confirm it through dispatch first. That way there's no confusion." Dawson nods slowly. He keys his radio, his voice measured, professional. "Dispatch, this is Sergeant Dawson. I need you to run a name for me. Sullivan. Annie Sullivan. A pause. Static. The plaza holds its breath. Then the voice crackles back, calm and matter-of-fact. Affirmative, Sergeant. Annie Sullivan. Date of birth, March 14th, 1974. Current position, Attorney General of the United States. The world stops. Keller's face drains of colour. Martinez closes his eyes. The backup officer's hand drops from her belt, and the crowd erupts. The words come through the radio with bureaucratic clarity, each syllable precise and devastating. Affirmative, Sergeant. Annie Sullivan. Date of birth, March 14th, 1974. Current position, Attorney General of the United States. The world stops. Keller's face drains of colour, crimson to white in the span of a heartbeat. His mouth opens, then closes. His hand, still hovering near where he'd reached for her arm, drops to his side like dead weight. Martinez takes a full step back, his eyes wide. The red-haired officer mutters something under her breath that might be a prayer or a curse. The crowd erupts. Gasps ripple across the plaza. Someone shouts, "Oh my God!" Another voice, sharper, angrier. "Are you kidding me right now?" The rapid-fire clicking of phone cameras intensifies. Screenshots, zoomed recordings, fingers swiping to share what they've just witnessed in real time. Dawson exhales slowly, a long breath that seems to drain years from his shoulders. He removes his cap entirely now, holds it in both hands, and looks directly at Sullivan. His voice is quiet, formal, stripped of everything but regret. "Madam Attorney General, on behalf of this department I apologize. You're free to go." Sullivan nods once. No smile, no acknowledgement of vindication. Just a single, controlled movement of her head. She adjusts her blazer with deliberate precision, smooths a wrinkle that isn't there, and picks up her portfolio from where she'd set it on the ground. She walks past Keller without a word. Doesn't look at him. Doesn't acknowledge his existence. Her heels click against the stone with the same measured rhythm as before, calm, unhurried, unbothered. The crowd parts. People step aside, creating a path. Some bow their heads, others hold up their phones, still recording, capturing her departure like witnesses to history. But before she reaches the edge of the plaza, before she descends the final steps toward the parking area, she stops, turns. Her eyes find Keller. He's standing exactly where she left him, frozen, his face still bloodless, his hands trembling at his sides. Her voice carries across the silence, clear and unyielding. "Officer Keller, you'll be hearing from my office." Then she turns again and walks away. The plaza remains silent until her car door closes. Only then does the noise return. Voices overlapping, phones ringing, the nervous laughter of people who've just watched power shift in real time. Dawson looks at Keller. His expression says everything his mouth doesn't. Keller's career just ended on camera. By 6 p.m., the video is trending on 3 platforms. By 8 p.m., it's been shared 40,000 times. By midnight, it's national news. CNN runs the clip with the chyron. Attorney General detained outside federal courthouse. MSNBC leads with legal scholars dissecting the Fourth Amendment violation in real time. Fox News hosts debate whether Sullivan should have just shown her ID. Legal scholars, civil rights activists, and ordinary citizens flood social media with outrage. The hashtag "You Can't Stop Justice" goes viral. Former prosecutors call it a textbook unlawful detention. Constitutional law professors assign it as a case study. A sitting federal judge tweets, "This is what happens when officers don't know the law they're sworn to enforce." The clip plays on loop, Keller's hand reaching for Sullivan's arm, her voice calm and cutting. "You do not have the authority to detain me." The moment dispatch confirms her identity. The colour draining from Keller's face, her final words, "You'll be hearing from my office." The internal affairs investigation is swift and surgical. Body camera footage confirms Sullivan's account frame by frame. Keller had no reasonable suspicion. The stop was pretextual. The detention was unlawful. The threatened use of force was excessive. His radio call requesting backup cited refusal to comply. Not criminal activity, not a threat, just a woman asserting her constitutional rights. Within 72 hours, Officer Paul Keller is suspended without pay. Within a week, he's fired. The termination letter is 2 pages long and brutally specific. Failure to articulate reasonable suspicion, unlawful detention, threatened arrest without legal basis, attempted physical contact without authority. His badge is revoked. His union reviews the body camera footage, the witness statements, the viral video. They decline to appeal. The department issues a formal apology within 48 hours. The statement is read by the chief of police, flanked by the mayor and the city attorney. It acknowledges the violation, promises accountability, and commits to reform. The words are carefully chosen, legally vetted, and utterly inadequate. The mayor announces mandatory retraining on constitutional policing for all officers. Use of force policies are revised. Body camera requirements are expanded. Oversight mechanisms are strengthened, and then the real hammer falls. The Department of Justice opens a pattern and practice investigation into the department's use of stops and detentions. Federal investigators arrive with subpoenas, data requests, and a mandate to examine years of records. They want every stop, every detention, every search. They want to know if what happened to Annie Sullivan was an anomaly or a symptom. The answer they will find is not comforting. Annie Sullivan holds a press conference in the Great Hall of the Justice Department. Behind her, carved into marble in letters 2 feet high, the words glow under television lights. The United States wins its point whenever justice is done, its citizens in the courts. Reporters fill the rows of chairs. Cameras line the back wall. The room hums with anticipation. She speaks without notes. What happened to me last Friday was not an anomaly. It was not an accident. It was the predictable result of a system that grants enormous power to individual officers without sufficient training, oversight, or accountability. I was fortunate. I knew my rights. I had a platform. I had witnesses. But millions of Americans, black, brown, poor, vulnerable, do not. They are stopped, detained, searched, arrested, not because they broke the law, but because someone with a badge decided they looked suspicious. This must end. Her voice is steady, controlled, but there's steel beneath it. She announces a sweeping reform initiative, federal grants tied to constitutional compliance, mandatory body camera programs with public access provisions, independent civilian review boards with subpoena power, and a national database tracking officer misconduct across jurisdictions. No more moving between departments to escape a bad record. No more internal investigations that clear their own. But then her tone shifts. She leans forward slightly, her eyes scanning the room. Rights that are not asserted are rights that will be taken. The Constitution is not self-executing. It requires courage. It requires vigilance. And it requires all of us, citizens and officers alike, to remember that the badge does not grant supremacy. It grants responsibility. The camera flashes erupt like lightning. Hands shoot up. Questions overlap. Madam Attorney General, will you pursue federal charges? What message does this send to law enforcement? Do you believe this was racially motivated? Sullivan raises one hand. The room quiets. The investigation will follow the facts. But let me be clear, no one is above the law, and no one, no matter their race, their profession, or their position, is beneath its protection. She steps back from the podium. The press conference ends, but the message echoes long after the cameras stop rolling.